Good morning, colleagues. I want to begin by thanking APSE for their kind invitation to join you all today. I want to tell you a little bit about how we in Antrim and Newtownabbey continued to provide high-performing frontline services during the height of COVID-19, how we responded to our communities during this time of crisis, and the importance of our employee engagement strategy in achieving all of this. And from a leadership perspective, I think we would all agree that the past 8 months or so can only be described as what has been the most difficult and challenging periods of our careers to date. It has been unprecedented, and I don't say that lightly. We are all highly aware of the impact that COVID-19 has had on our local communities, residents and businesses. And I think it's important to recognise that at the outset of this pandemic, we had no experience of dealing with a virus like this. And it's probably fair to say that at the beginning, we all went through an extremely intense period, which placed significant demands on all of us. But in my opinion, we've all stepped up to the plate. We have shown what we're made of, and we are all much more resilient and experienced as a result. So turning first to our residents and their need for service continuity during recent times, and in particular during the COVID crisis. I want to begin with our cemeteries, because clearly we had to put new working arrangements in place in our cemeteries very quickly. Hopefully you can see our staff there with their PPE gear on, and clearly, at the very start of the pandemic, there was a lot of fear amongst our staff in terms of them turning up to perform their daily duties. And really, as a council, the health and safety and well-being of our staff was our top priority at that point in time. And for a period actually in Antrim and Newtownabbey and in Northern Ireland, we were told to close our cemeteries. And it's fair to say that that did not go down well with the public. There was a lot of public reaction to that. I suppose at that time we also had a lot of staff shortages due to employees being required to shield and to self-isolate, etc. So we were dealing with a number of challenges at that particular point in time. So, how did we address that? How did we overcome that? And this is really where our leisure staff come in. So clearly our leisure centres were required to close. We were coming under a lot of pressure in terms of other service areas. And this is where our leisure staff really stepped up to the plate. I was really pleased with their response. We put a call out for volunteers, and I have to say we were overwhelmed by the response in terms of our employees wanting to help out their colleagues in other service areas. So we had a core team of people from leisure helping out right across the council in terms of delivering food boxes, helping out in cemeteries, helping out with temporary arrangements for waste collection, and helping out at our household recycling centres as well. So very much needed and very much appreciated by the council and by the public. And here's the team, and I really like this slide. It says, Carlsberg don't make dream teams, but if they did, and that's some of our leisure centre staff who had volunteered out and about delivering food boxes around the borough. So turning then to our parks, and again for a period of time they were required to close. And when we reopened our parks, we had a lot of catching up to do in terms of grass cutting, etc., as you would imagine. So again, in terms of actually working our way through that, we put a call out to the community, to our residents, to help us with our summer planting, and we had hundreds of volunteers. Again, we were completely overwhelmed by the response. People who just come out to help us with the planting, and indeed who then took on responsibility for watering those plants and for weeding the beds over the summer period. So again, that was an immense response from the community, and really appreciated again by the council and by the people who lived and worked in those areas. Moving on to waste then, and that's just a little image of a note that one of our residents put onto their wheelie bin to thank our staff, and I suppose it illustrates the fact that, you know, all of our staff right across the council were key workers in a sense, and anecdotally we had residents leaving sweets and biscuits and Easter eggs and all sorts of things for our staff. None of them managed to find their way into my office, surprisingly, but no, again, it was the little gestures from the public that really kept our staff going through the difficult times. I suppose in terms of waste, we did have a few hiccups at the start in terms of getting the right PPE in place, fitting perspex into our vehicles, putting extra transport in place to drop our staff at various points around the borough, because clearly they couldn't travel together in council vehicles in the way that they normally did. But yeah, once we got through those hiccups, it was fairly quickly back to business as usual. And again, everybody working together, coming together as a team, and just making sure that we could serve the public. Again, for a period of time, our household recycling centres had to close. So when we reopened, we had an unprecedented demand for that facility. And again, to address that, we had a team coming together, putting in place appointment systems, you know, managing the demand for those centres. And again, that was mainly done by our leisure centre staff, who stepped up to the plate again to help their colleagues out in other areas. It's fair to say that our environmental health team has never been busier. You can see the various demands that have been placed on them on the slide here. And they've had to, I suppose, meet those demands over a very prolonged period of time now. And they are now preparing to step up to assist our business community through the whole EU exit process. So very busy time for environmental health, a very, very important team in terms of what we do on the front line. And again, a team that's very much appreciated by this council and by the public. Now, it wouldn't come as any surprise to any of you if I say that communication was key right throughout this entire process. Communication with our elected members, communication with staff, communication with the public, and communication with other key stakeholders right across Northern Ireland. And this is just a little shot of our website, and you can see that all of the support that related to COVID-19 is front and centre there. And you know, if you reflect back on that period, things were changing day and daily. We had lots of information coming into the council. Some of it was helpful, some of it was less than helpful, so we had to work our way through all of that and try and communicate things to all of those key groups really quickly and concisely. And again, our civic offices were closed, so Antrim and Newtownabbey, we very quickly introduced a live chat facility, which has been extremely successful, and you can see the levels of satisfaction there that we have from our customers in terms of engaging with that facility. So we're very pleased in terms of how that went and how quickly we were able to introduce that, and of course that will continue into the future. Social media also played an extremely important part in terms of our communication strategy, and you can see the increase in reach there. Again, a very effective way of getting messages out to the public quickly, and particularly within that, you know, ever-changing context and environment. And we even received a few compliments along the way, and we don't normally get many of those, but you can see there we had one about the our improved online booking system, and we do have an app that our customers can use to book leisure services, etc., etc. So that has went down really well. There's one there about the professionalism of our staff. There's one about customer excellence, and then there's one just, you know, praising the council and our staff for their hard work and dedication during a very difficult period. And those are things that I would certainly want to echo as Chief Executive. Moving on then to a slightly different service, registration. And in terms of registration, we had to put measures in place very, very quickly to protect our staff and to protect the public. We were able to keep our registration open from day one, and again I suppose that's a reflection of just what an important service that is to the public. So again, staff there coming together, coming up with ideas, working as a team, and just making sure that we can provide that service to those people, some of whom, particularly in terms of registering deaths, were facing very difficult times, and who were very anxious, and really just trying to meet their needs and to meet them in the way that we normally would as a council. So moving on to our community, I suppose it's fair to say that in Northern Ireland we don't have responsibility for social services as such. The responsibilities that we have as a council in Northern Ireland are very different to the rest of the UK. But we were asked to step up and support the most vulnerable people in our society. And we did that by delivering food boxes through our community groups, and we had to put a whole structure and logistics piece in place to support that. And again, a lot of our staff from Leisure volunteered to help us with that. So that was very successful, and again, very much appreciated by those people who benefited from that. We also put in place a daily telephone call service to the most vulnerable, just to check that they were okay. It sounds quite simple, but again, very effective. You know, and what we learned was that some of those people who received those daily telephone calls, that was maybe the only contact that they were having with the outside world, and you know, it was the only opportunity that they were really getting to speak to people or to speak to someone else, because they were quite lonely and isolated at the time. So again, in terms of lessons learned, a very valuable service to the public. And you can see there our mayors out and about recognising the community and thanking various community groups for all of their hard work and presenting them with their little certificates of gratitude. And again, that was very much appreciated by those people who were in receipt of those certificates and that recognition. Turning then to our staff, and we were very quickly able to facilitate a lot of homeworking for our staff. We made good use of the Teams platform, and again, a lot of that working will continue into the foreseeable future and beyond. It certainly is a more efficient and effective way for our staff to work. We set up a dedicated hot desk in our human resources service. It was a hub, and again, that was well received by over 1,000 of our staff who have used that since we established it. Staff feedback has been that it has been really appreciated to have that instant service available during what has been very uncertain and anxious times. And our trade unions, as you would expect, we've had a very intense engagement with them. And we're currently working through a very significant process with our trade unions in terms of redeploying staff across the council to avoid compulsory redundancy. So a lot of cooperation, a lot of intense engagement there. And again, it would always be my approach to try and engage on issues at a very early stage with the trade unions, because I think in the long term it does save a lot of anxiety and frustration in terms of employee engagement. If we work through issues at a very early stage rather than let things and sort of, I suppose, let things dwell amongst the staff. So again, I do have to thank the trade unions in Antrim and Newtownabbey for their engagement and their support and some of the practical things that they have suggested to us along the way. And as I said earlier, you know, as a council we take our staff health, safety and well-being very seriously. It's first and foremost in terms of everything that we do, and you can see hopefully some of the initiatives that we have in place to support staff. Some of them are new, some of them we've had in place for quite a long time, but those support mechanisms are in place for staff right across the board, and again the feedback in relation to that has been very, very positive. I think it's important to mention our councillors. within the context of service continuity and service excellence, because they very quickly had to adapt to new ways of working, to remote meetings, and in a sense they were our eyes and ears on the ground. They were, feeding a lot of information issues to us as senior officers, and we were able to respond to those very, very quickly and to make sure that everything that we were doing on the ground was meeting the needs of their constituents. Our elected members stepped up very quickly in their civic leadership role. They were very visible and they were very supportive to the senior management team within the council as well. So again, their support, it goes without saying, has been much appreciated. So I suppose, like everyone else, we're planning for recovery and a return to business as usual, whatever that looks like. And I suppose in the midst of all of this, we are facing and planning for other challenges that are facing us, things like Brexit, things like winter preparations, etc., etc. So, I suppose the context is that we are going to all continue in a very challenging environment for the foreseeable future, and we just need to maintain our resilience and be prepared for whatever challenges face us in the coming weeks and months. So I just want to conclude by saying that I do believe that all of the councils who are represented here today deserve an enormous amount of credit and recognition for their leadership over the past few months. There have been a lot of additional demands on us, and it has been extraordinary. I'm very pleased about how we have responded as a sector here in Northern Ireland. Other stakeholders have relied on our local knowledge and our ability to be agile and innovative in order that we can provide the practical support that is needed by our local businesses and residents. I think, like everyone else, I'm quite optimistic about the future, but I'm realistic as well in terms of knowing that rebuilding our economy and supporting our communities through what is anticipated to be quite a prolonged recovery, alongside the challenges of us exiting the European Union, is going to present further demands on all of us. We are all experienced public servants, and we all do recognise the benefits of working in partnership and of events such as this, where we can share best practice with each other. And I think in local government in particular, we're quite aware that we can't meet the demands of our people and the needs of our people without the help and support of others. So, I think we need to acknowledge the tremendous value in collaboration and networking in terms of what APSE has to offer. It is much appreciated. And although we've been through a very difficult period, I think it has led to an increased recognition of the civic leadership role that local councils perform day and daily within our society, and hopefully this recognition will continue into the future. I want to just take the opportunity at this point to thank you all for listening today, but I want to close with a short video which sums up the response of my leisure team within Antrim and Newtownabbey in terms of ensuring that we continue to provide high-performing frontline services during the height of the pandemic, and hopefully it will let you see just why I am so proud of these staff. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Richard Stewart. I'm the manager of Allen Park and Ballyar Leisure Centres.
Hi, my name is Brian Crichton and I'm the assistant manager at the Valley Leisure Centre in Newtownabbey.
Good afternoon, my name is Alan Napier. I'm centre manager over in Crumlin Leisure Centre.
So in March 2020, when COVID hit, we then had to shut leisure centres, so the leisure centres were shut, and there was a bit of uncertainty about what we'll be doing next and where we'll be redeployed to.
I was redeployed to the cemeteries along with a work colleague from Valley Leisure Centre called Brian Crichton.
I was redeployed under the head of leisure, Matt McDowell, to a small team, 5 guys. So the drivers were myself, Roy Simple, Dee Gurley. The storemen were Alan Boardman and Colin Fleming, who helped us pack the vehicles. Our task was to get the food parcels out to community groups who would then in turn distribute the parcels to the community and the residents of the borough who were maybe self-isolating or shielding, or just those who were basically in need.
There was various different roles to the job. Probably the first one was the welfare of our own staff. So supervisor on ground, you were sort of looking after the staff, ensuring they had correct PPE, ensure that they were safe on site, they were keeping their social distancing, and obviously getting on with what needed to be done at the time.
The new job was quite a challenge for me at the start. It was very humbling experience being up in the cemeteries. We were based around, we had to prepare the graves, digging and refilling.
We also had to liaise with the public. The cemetery was closed to the public quite a bit, so part of the role was to deal with the public at the gates, especially when the funerals were coming in. Numbers were restricted and who could attend, so it was quite sensitive how you sort of dealt with who was allowed into the grounds and who was not.
During the day when our funerals, burials weren't in, we were actually grass cutting and monitoring the amount of people, that because it was closed at a time, so you weren't allowing the public into the cemeteries at the time, so we were monitoring the gates.
To be part of that team during that time when the borough residents were in need was very rewarding. The work, okay, it was hard work and long hours delivering the food parcels, but we could see what we were achieving in the borough, and we could actually see the people that were helping in the community group. So it was rewarding, and as a team we bonded quickly. We learnt very quickly about what the things we should be doing, how we should do it. So from initially getting that call to deploying and then doing the task was a really quick turnaround, and the guys had a real sense of achievement and a sense of sort of worth and getting this done for the community and for the borough.
So as time went on and the COVID hit us, we were quite busy with quite a few funerals coming through, so it was all hands to the deck to try and get those roles completed. Another area then would be the maintenance of the site, so we were cutting the grass, cutting the hedges, litter picking, cleaning the graves, especially when the cemeteries reopened to the public. There was obviously quite a lot of people coming on site, so we had to ensure it was safe for them to do so.
This role was very different from the job that I normally do. Truthfully, it was one that I really enjoyed being part of. Seeing it from the other side of being up to the cemeteries and just at funerals, but seeing it how burials were done from start to finish.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a total transformation, getting out of the office and out into the fresh air. Again, working with the public and working with different staff. The cemeteries is sort of an area you drive past every day. You never really think much about it. It's only when you're actually involved or you're having to go to a funeral you realise just what the important role they play and what goes on in the background to prepare a site for funerals and the sensitivities that come along with that.
So working in leisure, sometimes we work in silos and we just look at leisure and the things that we're doing in leisure. Working with community groups and elected members while we were delivering the parcels to community groups was amazing. It was good to see the community groups took ownership of getting the food parcels out to those who were really in need in the borough. I'm actually quite proud of what I witnessed and the commitment that the community groups gave to getting these food parcels out to their own community. They were working hard, long days, and for me, just delivering the food parcels, to seeing them getting them out, I was surprised at just how willing they were to help out during obviously the early stages of lockdown during COVID.
I was very proud to be part of that team because it was up to us to ensure that the burials were done with dignity, and we showed compassion towards the family members that were attending the funerals. So yeah, I was very proud to be part of that.
It was a good job. It was a coming together of different departments. To say we come from leisure and we're working along with parks, the cemeteries. It was a good team effort. It was well planned in the background. We had everything we needed. We had all our PPE, all our supplies. We had support in the background to help us, especially when it was very heavy. The roads were quiet. There wasn't much happening. It was quite an eerie sort of time, but the council were there in the background supporting us and helping us get through with everything.
I'm proud to have been part of that team and what the guys in the team achieved over that short period of time.
In July this year, I went back to my normal post back in Crumlin Leisure Centre, and on reflection, I was very, very glad that I could see, I got the chance to look at other operations which take place within the council.
Well, I worked in the cemeteries from 1st of April until the end of June. And then we were redeployed then back into leisure, but different areas. We went to the golf sites to oversee the opening of the golf clubs. and to try and get them back operational again. So we stepped away from the cemeteries and moved on to there.
I'd like to finish off by saying I really appreciate what the guys in cemeteries do. Seeing what they do day in, day out, and it gives me a greater understanding as to what goes on in the background. I for one am very proud to work for Antrim and Newtownabbey Borough Council. I think what they've done throughout the pandemic, both for staff and the public, went over and above what I would expect from my local council.